EPA is proposing new limits, which are so tight the only way auto manufacturers can stay within them is to switch their cars to zero-emission vehicles.
There are forces spending endless millions on enforcement, research, and public health initiatives every year, but will never once try to tell you the full truth behind their regulations. They sell an idea: clean air, health, sustainability, but some would say it's a distraction from the disturbing truth that there were a lot of serious accusations against them, that they've caused unnecessary financial burden on diesel owners and created a false sense of environment protection, and much, much worse. So buckle up. We're going on a journey through the diesel world's battle against emission control regulations. We'll be examining how the DPF system really became one of the most controversial, yet mandated exhaust parts ever, and at what cost. Once the regulations were set in stone, the diesel world had no choice but to comply. The DPF system, once an idea on a drawing board, was now a mandated piece of technology in every diesel engine. But behind the shiny promises of cleaner air and healthier communities, a deeper, more troubling reality began to surface. The Environmental Protection Agency, aka EPA, and the European Union put forth their stringent emission standards with one clear goal in mind: reduce particulate matter and nitrogen oxide emissions from diesel engines. On paper, it was a noble cause. Diesel engines, with their unparalleled torque and efficiency, had become the workhorse of industries and transportation. But as they ran, they spewed an endless stream of tiny soot particles, dangerous pollutants that contribute to respiratory diseases, heart conditions, and other health problems. So, regulators responded with force, pushing through regulations that would eventually mandate DPFs on all new diesel-powered vehicles. It seemed like a win-win for the environment and public health. But what happened next? The costs started to pile up. For manufacturers, the shift meant investing millions into redesigning engines to meet the new standards. But for diesel owners, the burden was much more personal. The DPF, while effective in capturing soot, wasn't a perfect solution. In fact, it created an entirely new set of problems. The most glaring issue: the regeneration process. For the DPF to stay effective, it needs to regenerate, which is a process where accumulated soot is burned off. This requires high exhaust temperatures, something that's difficult to achieve during short city trips or low-speed driving. In other words, for many diesel owners, their vehicles were forced into forced regeneration cycles at inconvenient times, often resulting in higher fuel consumption and increased wear on the engine. These cycles, meant to clean the filter, could go on for long stretches, leading to a major inconvenience. If the regeneration didn't happen properly, the DPF would clog up, causing the engine to lose power and triggering costly repairs. Suddenly, a relatively cheap diesel vehicle became an expensive maintenance nightmare. In some cases, DPF failures required entire engine rebuilds, and we're talking about thousands of dollars in repairs. The cost didn't stop there. Diesel owners found themselves paying more at the pump because the regeneration process increased fuel consumption. Over time, the small savings from diesel's better fuel economy were eaten up by the need for repairs and fuel inefficiency.
Do you want to unlock your truck's true power? If so, meet Dynovox kits. We engineer performance upgrades for diesel rigs for years now, as we got all your needs over DPF delete kits, EGR delete kits, headers, exhaust pipes, and more. Let's say you are running a 6.4 power stroke. You can just use our 4-inch DPF delete race pipe to kill DPF headaches. You want to boost your Duramax 6.6? Well, you just drop in our downpipe exhaust pipe. For L5P Duramax owners, the Duramax 5-inch delete is there to go. Head to Dynovoxparts.com or click the link in the description.
Here's the real kicker. While the DPF succeeded in reducing particulate matter in the short term, many would argue it wasn't a true solution to the pollution problem. The real culprit, carbon dioxide emissions, was still left unchecked. In fact, DPFs could only mitigate one type of pollution while leaving other harmful emissions unaddressed. Diesel engines were still burning fossil fuels, producing CO2 and contributing to global warming. But of course, this was conveniently overlooked in the rush to make diesel vehicles cleaner. The regulatory agencies and the manufacturers had painted a picture of progress and environmentalism, but was it really the whole truth? Let's not forget that carbon dioxide remains a far more significant contributor to climate change than the soot particles DPFs were designed to capture. Ironically, DPF technology didn't do much to tackle the real environmental issues that would have made a more meaningful impact on global pollution. Automakers, having invested heavily in complying with these regulations, had no choice but to push DPFs into every diesel engine. They were mandated, whether consumers liked it or not. But behind the scenes, the frustration mounted. Manufacturers began to make DPF systems that were cheaper to produce, sacrificing quality for cost savings. They became prone to clogging faster, needing more frequent maintenance, and in some cases became so complex that only certified repair shops could address the issues, further adding to the cost for the consumer. What began as an attempt to improve air quality had quickly spiraled into a situation where diesel owners were forced into a perpetual cycle of high repair bills and impaired vehicle performance. For many, the hope of a greener future felt more like an economic trap, one where the promise of cleaner air was overshadowed by mounting bills and reduced vehicle lifespan. As the years went by, the DPF system became entrenched in every diesel-powered vehicle sold. The environmental benefits were undeniable, but were they as grand as advertised? And were they worth the financial burden placed on the shoulders of diesel owners? Some argue that the DPF did achieve its goal. It cleaned up the air by reducing particulate matter, something that was crucial for improving public health. But others point out that it was a temporary, albeit costly fix. If regulators had pushed for broader and more comprehensive environmental reforms, such as supporting the shift toward electric or hybrid vehicles, the overall impact could have been far greater, without leaving diesel owners holding the bag for the fallout.